The Genesis had finally met its end. It was finally time to move on to something new, as the next generation of gaming was on the rise. But Sega couldn't let go of the system that made them a household name, and they kept trying to keep the Genesis alive with the 32X and the Nomad. But it was to no avail as they went ahead and switched gears to creating the next Sega console. And it came all the way from the sixth rock from the sun. It's the Sega Saturn. Pretendo didn't have anything to show for itself yet, and yeah, Sony was coming soon with their new PlayStation, but the true diehards couldn't back away from the true 32-bit graphical capabilities that Sega was giving. The Sega Saturn was released on May 11, 1995, as a 32-bit follow-up to the Genesis, but that might have presented a problem as some opted to get a 32X instead of the new expensive Saturn, and they've kinda created a little civil war for themselves. But the 32X died quickly, so it wasn't a problem for very long. And speaking of price, the Saturn debuted at a price of $400, which was a bit more expensive for the time, and gave Sony an opportunity to capitalize on the matter. Sure, your PS1 may be $300, says Sega, but we can't hear you on Saturn as we ship out our systems early, pissing off all the major retailers and even getting dropped by KB Toys. The Saturn did have a rocky start, but fans couldn't wait to get their hands on this contraption from another planet. And with a controller like this, you couldn't go wrong. The Saturn had two controller ports right underneath the Sega logo, and you can use controllers like the regular or the Stunner light gun along with a few others. Setting those aside for future AC reviews, and we're continuing with the console review. On the front of the Saturn is the font and console logos shown not so prominently on the lid, and we also have the power button, the reset button, and the open button. Also on the lid is a part where you can see the inside where the disc would be and watch it do its thing. That's something you don't usually see at all. Behind the buttons and lid is a cartridge slot. No, it's not used for backwards compatibility with Genesis titles, but it's actually used for additional memory and cheat cartridges among others. I don't have any of them. Probably should have got one for the review's sake, but I've never had the need. On the back we have the AC in, AV out, and communication connector, all tucked into one corner. And on the other corner, past the serial number and other info, is a slot which you can open to find the battery save that you can replace if needed. Also in the very back you can see another cartridge slot. This was used in other regions for plugging in video CD cards, which allowed the Saturn to play video CDs on the system and give certain games a higher quality. Sadly, this never came out in the US. Sometimes we get cheated out of the good stuff. For games, the Saturn has its own line of games ranging from its greats like Nights into Dreams and Tomb Raider, and the ports like Virtua Fighter and Virtua Cop, but it also has the turds like Sonic R and Sonic 3D Blast. It's fair to say Sonic didn't have the best time on the Saturn, but its lineup is still decent in its own right. The Sega Saturn is fondly remembered today. It's probably the least remembered system out of Sega's whole lot. Maybe other than the Pico, but if you happen to find a Saturn around your area, and at a reasonable price, you ought to pick it up so you can experience an underrated gem of a system that came all the way from the rigid planet itself. It's the Sega Saturn. So Nintendo had their 64, Sega had their Saturn, but a new competitor was coming, and nobody was ready. But you will be on the next episode where we're looking at Sony's first entry into the video game market, and it was called PlayStation.
If you think I missed anything, please leave a comment. If you like what you see, leave a like. If you think others could get knowledge out of this, share this video. And if you want to see more, go ahead and subscribe. Now if you'll excuse me, nostalgia is calling.